It's March 2020, and I've apparently got nothing to do, so I'm on YouTube watching a highlight reel of Joseph Anderson playing Persona 5. I'm watching it and I think, that game looks pretty good. I don't really like JRPGs, I've not played that many of them, but I might give this one a go. And I was in luck. The Royal version, the souped up version with a bunch of stuff added to it, had recently released. As fine an opportunity as any. It was good, it was really good. I liked the premise of the story and the characters were kinda cool as well. I particularly loved the game's sense of style and showmanship. Sounds great so far. What could possibly go wrong? Well, the combat. I didn't like the combat. For me, it was just too boring. It felt like filler, like I was doing it to get to the good parts. And remember, I hadn't played many other JRPGs up to that point beyond mild curiosity, so the combat was a little confusing to get my head around. Eventually, it was just too big of a hurdle for me to clear, so I stopped playing. I put it in the metaphorical bin and did something else. Except you may have noticed that this happened in March of 2020, where there was nothing else to do. We were all confined to our homes at the time due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So yeah, I tried it again. Fast forward a year later and I have spent over 300 hours playing Persona 5, 4 and 3. It's easily one of, if not my current favourite series of video games, and it's even responsible for Harry's lore, which is, if Harry is making a YouTube video, he has to talk about Persona. Here's a fun question. If I could have gone outside, if there were other things I could have been doing, would I have given Persona 5 that second chance? Would Persona be a series that I've spent so much time on? The answer to this is, of course, I don't know. Maybe I would have gone back to Persona 5 eventually, or maybe I would have never picked it up again. The point is, I was influenced by the context of my play. I was influenced by outside factors, things that aren't the video game. This is something we don't really talk about that much. If you think about some of your favourite games, you've probably got a few memories associated with them that aren't the game. Mirror's Edge is one of my favourite games ever made, but it's also the first game I bought on Steam with my own money. Runescape is my first ever multiplayer game, Tomb Raider 2 is my first ever game. The list goes on. These are all games that are near and dear to my heart, and don't get me wrong, they're all excellent video games. But because of the context surrounding my play of them, they've become just that little bit more special. This is something that's deeply personal. It varies from person to person. A classic example of this is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, a game that I actually think is quite divisive. Look, I did a Twitter poll where 18 people responded, so you know I did my research. In one camp, Ocarina of Time is a masterpiece. It's a rousing adventure set in a huge world full of dungeons, monsters and secrets. Ocarina good. In the other camp, Ocarina of Time is a poorly controlled, poorly signposted mess that has aged like a spilled bottle of semi-skimmed milk. Ocarina bad. Now, allow me to transcend the usual video game discourse here by saying both of these camps are correct. I know, amazing, how is that possible beyond, opinions and how all of that stuff works? Ocarina of Time is special. For many people it was their first 3D game. It was a pioneer, very few people had seen something like this before. Gamers all around the world were experiencing a literal new dimension of play where a boulder can run you over. I don't know why I wrote that down as like the example. It introduced concepts that today we take for granted, such as a 3D camera or cool music. And if you're in Camp Ocarina Good, then you've probably played it the way God intended, on a shiny new Nintendo 64, eyes glued to the CRT television, and also it's raining outside and you're 10 years old and you have school tomorrow. But what about the dark corner? What about Camp Ocarina Bad? Well, for Camp Ocarina Bad, I'd wager a majority of them played the game long after it became a cultural artifact, where we've now refined what the game originally pioneered. We've got dual-stick controls now and targeting systems that aren't made for aliens. To sum it up in a phrase that I don't necessarily 100% agree with, Ocarina of Time has aged poorly. It also doesn't help that you're playing it on an emulator or a 3DS that only has one stick, unless you have that weird add-on thing that I don't actually think I've ever seen in the wild. You're maybe even an adult now, maybe like me, you don't have the innocence of childhood, fully lucid to the fact that you're living on Turf Island. Now, I'm going to be the first person to admit that I am generalizing hugely. Maybe you've played it for the first time this year and fell in love. Maybe you played it when you were 5 and thought, these graphics are going to look shit in 20 years. I can't speak for any of these people who voted yes or no, and it's likely that these two camps are a spectrum where the context of play is not the only factor. Opinions are still alive and well, don't worry, but I'm arguing that the influence is there, especially for a game like Ocarina of Time. How you played Ocarina of Time and when in your life and history that you played Ocarina of Time is maybe just as important as Ocarina of Time. So here's a question. Can we design for this? Can we design video games with context of play in mind? The obvious answer at first might be no. All of these situations that I brought up are all personal to me. It's not like Shigeru Miyamoto knew that people were going to try and play his game on a 1080p monitor in the future because a 1080p monitor didn't exist in 1988. This guy is so smart, what's next? But as expected, I'm here to argue the opposite. It is possible to make games with this in mind. In fact, I'd argue that every game that gets made does this, whether the designers know it or not. Let me give an example. While I'm talking about my deranged obsessions, let me talk to you about Ace Attorney. I picked up the entire series last year. I played basically every game I could legally get my hands on. Here's my tier list. I will challenge any and all who disagree with my objectively correct opinions to single combat pistols at dawn. My favourite by far is Apollo Justice. I liked all the characters. Clavier is probably my favourite prosecutor in the series. In every case, is a standout, and it is my favourite one, but it was also the first one I played on a handheld. I played it on my 3DS. Ace Attorney was originally a handheld series. You can purchase a lot of them on PC now, but the game itself has been designed for handheld systems. There's a lot of flashbacks and repetitions and gaps in the ebb and flow of the game that is suited to multiple short play sessions over a long period of time, as opposed to a full-blown 3-hour binge of a case in one sitting. Yeah, this is probably a bit obvious, but developers design their games to fit certain systems, some games being more suitable for others. This is why the Steam Deck was very confusing in concept to me, because there's no way I'd want to play big bombastic romps such as Deathloop or Cyberpunk 2077 on a piddly little screen on a train. I think this is why Vampire Survivors works so well on the Steam Deck, why it's the most popular game on the Steam Deck. It's because the Steam Deck is the perfect context for it. It's a better handheld game than it is sat down at a desk with a mouse and keyboard. This is because it's a simple game. You move in the 8 ordinal and cardinal directions, choose upgrades, and that's it. That's everything that you can do. Each run is capped out at 30 minutes, so it's actually a little below the average for your bog standard roguelite. Vampire Survivors has been accused of having no depth, of being too simple, of even having regressive design. And I can definitely see where these people are coming from and maybe even agree with them if there wasn't context to consider. If Vampire Survivors wasn't a game suitable for handhelds, and cutting a bit deeper into the issue here, if it wasn't a capital T, capital G tranquil game. Yeah, that's right, I'm bringing it back. I talked about this in my very first video on No Man's Sky. Don't watch it if you haven't, it's not very good. But in that video I described the Tranquil game as a game that is so simple and brainless that your mind can wander and think about other things while you're playing. You can use it to decompress. A Tranquil game has a gameplay loop that is very specific, that you can perform without much focus. Basically, all of this wanky nonsense aside, a Tranquil game is a game that you can play while listening to a podcast. And we see this all the time, no? The simulator games such as Truck Simulator and Power Wash Simulator. These are both games that are really quite boring, they're dull, it's just the same thing over and over again. Yet I, along with many others, love these games as a way of winding down. Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to put these video games next to Elden Ring, because they both demand different contexts for play. Vampire Survivors is a Tranquil game, whereas Elden Ring is a sit down and think about the buttons that you're going to push on the controller before pushing them. Yeah, I should have thought that one through. Okay, so developers can actually design their games towards specific types of players and situations of play. Big deal, I want more, I want some hard-hitting stuff. What else can affect my perception of a game? What do you think was the first game I played on my Steam Deck? It wasn't Vampire Survivors. The first game I played on my Steam Deck was Yu-Gi-Oh! 2006 for the Game Boy Advance. Like, I'm not even joking, that's not a joke, that's what I've been playing on my Steam Deck. Like, I couldn't make up a dumber game to be playing. I can't really give an explanation for why I've been playing this game. At the risk of losing some of you, I was going to make up something about GOAT format in Yu-Gi-Oh! And some kind of yearning for that, but I mean, that was in 2005. This game was from 2006. I think it's that the Steam Deck fully realizes the premise of those Raspberry Pi emulation machines that you see. The build quality is a lot better and you have a larger library. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that they put a gyroscope in this thing. While you can use it for PC games, I don't think that's what Valve were thinking when they did it. You can put whatever you want on there, and for whatever reason I decided to put on one of the games of my childhood. And something happened that I just had to bring up. You see, on this particular emulator for the Game Boy Advance, you can press this button and it will speed the game up by a significant margin. It sounds very simple, but basically it turns Yu-Gi-Oh! 2006 into the greatest video game of all time. Is your opponent playing a stall deck? Just skip until you lose or get a card that breaks the lock. Not interested in your opponent's turn? Skip it altogether. Farming up points for packs? Skip it. Not interested in seeing all the open card animations play? Skip that too. Honestly, I played a few of the other Yu-Gi-Oh games and realized that they live and die based on how quickly the game plays out. I even think Master Duel, the most popular Yu-Gi-Oh game by far at the moment, is too slow. I feel 100% confident in saying that if this was not a feature in the Game Boy Advance emulator, then this game would have been downgraded to a mild curiosity as opposed to a game that I spent an entire weekend playing. And let me reiterate, it's a feature for an emulator. If I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! 2006 the way God intended on a Game Boy Advance, I would not be singing its praises right now, trust me. What is happening here is a subset of the context of play called paratext. It covers everything about the text that isn't the text, but is still in the text. Yeah, that makes sense. So like the title of a book, the font of the cover, the loading screen of a video game. Fellow creator IMO has a video that dives into the subject of paratext in a much better detail than here, specifically talking about Leon Wright's high score system. For my Yu-Gi-Oh situation, it has a kind of paratext. It's a little bit softer, it's not put in there by the creator of the work, but it's still there in the game that was done by someone, a modder or a fanfic writer, or in this case an emulator developer. Whether they knew it or not, the speed up feature of the Visual Boy Advance had a pretty huge impact on my experience. And so on and so on. There's tons of examples here. The social media sharing giant that is Wordle, or the instruction manual of Tunic, or indeed the high score system of Neon White. To close out, I want to bring up that this kind of thing can exist in a more mundane fashion, and it doesn't exist absolutely. It's fun to talk about these design ideas as if they're the secret ingredient, their special sauce to making your game amazing and good and fun, when it's not just a stew of different ideas thrown together, but these ideas applied in different amounts. There's lots of reasons why Vampire Survivors is a good game. There's lots of hidden depths in its simplicity that actually might be better experienced if you have the time to dedicate to it rather than a distracted 30-minute session. One of my favourite games I played last year was a game called Slipways. It's a take on the 4X genre that aims to streamline rather than overcomplicate. The challenge lies in making connections between different planets to balance the resources that each planet needs. And when I started playing this game, it was over a long weekend where I had lots of different things to do and errands to run. So I remember keeping Slipways on in the background, sitting down and making literally one or two moves for a few minutes and then running off to the tip. The point is, it's not like the developer was sitting there in his evil lair scheming, yes, Harry is going to be playing this game during a busy weekend, we need to design it around that. That's ridiculous. It just so happened that the game's relaxed turn-based nature worked for me, and later on when I realized that this game was really good and I should play it. By the way, this game is really good and you should play it. I played it in a more conventional fashion, an hour or two from start to end, and had a great time. Now, ultimately this is not an exciting story. I played Slipways over a busy weekend, amazing, a real page-turner there. But that's the point. A lot of the game design conversations that I've seen have taken place in a vacuum, without considering the player and the context in which they play the game and other such mundanities. I hope that's something that when we talk about games, we consider a little bit more.